Blood Warlock, Succubus Partner in the Apocalypse, Chapter 20, First Order, Blazing Beetle. For safety reasons, Zeman immediately held his breath as the blood evaporated after coming into contact with the heat of the flames. He had no way of knowing if this monster's blood had obtained poisonous attributes of some kind after eating different organisms to evolve to where it was currently. In any case, with his current stamina, he could endure several minutes without breathing, without experiencing any kind of problem. Enduring the overwhelming pain that enveloped the lower part of his body and slowly began to affect the other parts, Zeman raised his sword and fiercely slashed at the neck of the huge creature again. Another large chunk of flesh was cut in half, and an even larger wave of blood than the previous one came out of the monster's body. The pain was so great that the giant beetle began to run while roaring in pain. Boom! The huge, sturdy body of the elephant beetle hit a building, knocking it down in the process. Several stones of all sizes flew everywhere, and Zeman was hit by several of them. His face constricted even more in pain, and a big stone struck his head, making him feel dizzy. He felt his whole world spinning and had to bite his lips with all his strength to the point of breaking them to fight the drowsiness that had suddenly overwhelmed him. A thick line of blood slid silently from his forehead to his left eye, partially covering his vision. Because the rainwater could not overcome the flames of the elephant beetle, the blood over his left eye accumulated until everything within his left vision range had turned crimson red. Using the pain and hatred he felt after being injured to such an extent, Zeman not only did not stop his attacks, on the contrary, he began to slash more and more fiercely. The Xuanwan sword in his hands had become a whirlwind of blades that cut large chunks of flesh per second. The giant elephant beetle was very strong, its defenses and was powerful, and its horn was strong enough to knock down minor buildings. However, its mobility was its greatest weakness. With Zeman on its upper body, the giant beetle had no way to reach that area, so it could only do its best to force him down from it. Like a beast that had gone completely berserk, the mutated beetle began to writhe ferociously as it slammed against every nearby building in sight. Some of these buildings collapsed immediately, while others held firm even after being hit several times. Zeman felt his head spinning, and the weakness his body and mind felt was slowly overwhelming him, to the point where even his right eye began to see his surroundings blurred. While his left eyesight practically blocked by the blood dripping from his head and his right eyesight failing due to exhaustion, Zeman had turned into something similar to a machine. With the glove's protruding thorn firmly stuck into the monster's flesh to prevent himself from falling, he slashed with his sword relentlessly, knowing that stopping meant the end of his path. The thought of not falling to his death was the only thing that kept him steady. Both living beings fought for several minutes for their own survival, trying to defeat the other for a higher evolution. The sound of constant explosions caused by more than 20 buildings collapsing from the giant elephant beetle's mad charge had defeated the sound of rumbling thunder. The area surrounding the pharmacy had become a dead zone. Crushed zombies with their deformed bodies and countless cement blocks were scattered everywhere. Some of them, with their brains intact, struggled with all their strength, tearing their legs away from the rest of their body as they crawled towards the source of the sound. The blood of over 200 zombies, in conjunction with the huge amount of blood lost by the giant monster that had accumulated to the point where even the fierce storm had no way of washing it away as easily as before. After what seemed like an eternity, the wild movements of the elephant beetle stopped, and its charge stalled. After the constant loss of blood, after being attacked again and again in such a delicate and deadly area by Zeman, the beast finally lost all its strength and collapsed to the ground. Boom. An explosion similar to that of a collapsing building shook the surrounding ground. Zeman's body was almost sent flying. However, although he was not sent flying, the price he had to pay was high. heartbreaking cry of pain slipped out of his mouth as he felt the bones of his left hand cracking. To hold himself steady, Baizeman had no choice but to rely on his left hand as well as his piercing glove. However, suffering from such a sudden and abrupt impulse, his wrist that was not so flexible had bent backwards. The flames of the giant elephant beetle's body had stopped as the beast could not withstand the energy consumption, and the new pain made Baizeman's mind clear for a moment. Making use of the sudden surge of clarity, Baizeman wielded his sword and slashed at an even faster speed than before. After cutting more than 50 times, several green letters flashed in his retina. Since the birth of all the chaos after the arrival of the Soul Record, Baizeman had never felt so happy to see those strange messages. His mouth opened and closed several times as if he wanted to say something. In the end, he was so exhausted that he did not manage to utter any words. Before the whole world went out of control, Baizeman was just a normal student who lived his daily life, striving for a better future. Although he was still striving to secure a better future, everything had changed. Bones of his left hand had broken. His left eye had closed due to the accumulated blood running from his forehead. Some of his dark hair had turned crimson red. His feet hurt and burned horribly. His single eye that was open could hardly take any information from the outside world. When had he suffered so much? Baizeman had once heard in the past that when the pain reached a certain point, the brain turned off those receptors as an automatic defense mechanism so that it was no longer possible to feel pain. Before, he was not so sure about this, but now he had confirmed it. Although he was in terrible condition, his mind was so exhausted that he no longer felt any pain. The flames surrounding the elephant beetle's shell were extinguished after its death, and the rain began to fall on the area once again after losing the burning heat that suppressed it. Standing over the 3+ meter creature, Baizeman could not help but lift his face to the sky as he felt the raindrops falling on him. Although the battle was already over, his grip on the Zhuan sword had not loosened, as this sword was the only way he had to feel safe at the moment. Tired, his feet wobbled, and he could not help but fall downward. In fact, he was so exhausted that he didn't even notice he was falling to the ground. All he felt was the wind in his surroundings, and that was it. However, fortunately for him, someone had caught him just as he was about to hit the ground and make his already horrible condition even worse. An extremely soft body held him gently. The sweet scent of roses, so familiar but at the same time so unfamiliar to him, enveloped his exhausted body, and as if it was the best medicine to relieve his situation, he couldn't help but breathe a bit more as if he was intoxicated.
Good job, Baizeman.
Soft and innocent voice like that of a baby, without impurities, reached his ears. However, he could no longer distinguish what was what.
That was a wonderful victory. You can rest now.
As if they were the words of his mother and most beloved being, Baizeman obediently closed his eyes as his exhaustion finally defeated him, and a smile rose unconsciously on his face.
You have acquired the soul power of First Order Blazing Beetle level 30. Magic plus 50, mana plus 70, health plus 40, stamina plus 28, strength plus 15. You have leveled up and reached level 16. You have leveled up and reached level 17. You have leveled up and reached level 18. You have leveled up and reached level 19. You have leveled up and reached level 20. You get plus 2 status points to distribute freely for each level.